And we're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today, we are talking about Pride. It's Pride Month, the month of June, and this is Pride Day on Fresh Waves. And I think one of the things that we forgot, I always tell my listeners that my shows start at the very beginning. And people say, you know, oh, I want to take yoga lessons, but they have no idea what yoga is. So we talk about yoga. We start at the very beginning. And I think we have to identify this morning the LGBTQ. Everybody hears those letters all the time. And now I think you can go as many as 15 characters long with all these different differentiations. But we'll start with the beginning and just say the words, as Suzanne and I have been talking about. Language is so important. So LGBTQ is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. Say those words. I remember when my kids were little, I went to a lecture from a parenting specialist, and she said, do it, folks. Get in front of the mirror. Say the word penis. Say it. Say it until you can say it well and with meaning and not blush and look goofy, because you pass that on to your kids. We need to learn how to say these words with respect and love and kindness so that when they roll off our tongue, it means nothing more than Lisa or Fred or Skylar. It's just people. And love is the word, right? It's got to be that simple. Joining us in the studio right now, we have Lisa Ronco. You're coming into our conversation, Lisa. You have a little bit of background here about Suzanne. And you are doing a Pride Festival in Stouffville, which will be the first Pride Festival, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But for now, Suzanne, I think we have to go back and check in, because we've talked about a lot of things, and some of those mean things that we see happening now, and for some reason this year in particular, they seem to be bubbling to the surface. How's Skylar doing? How is Skylar doing now that Skylar is not Aviva, and Skylar is several years into being Skylar?
That's a great question, Bren, and I'll tell you, I am thrilled to be able to say that Skylar is doing brilliantly well. Skylar has nearly finished his certification as a psychotherapist.
Wow.
Skylar is a very active artist and is living his life. He's living his life.
Living the dream, kind of.
Well, he's living his life.
Yeah.
Like living, just quote, his life. And what's really, really interesting, I'll just say give you this little moment of that will identify exactly how he's doing. So as you know, I'm writing a book. Mm-hmm. It's hopefully it will come out in about 6 or 8 months. It's called Trans, capital TRANS, Transcending Gender, A Guide for Work and Home. And I'm writing it with my co-writer, Dr. Helma Seidel, who is also a psychotherapist of trans people. And I'm really looking forward to this book because it's been about 1.5 years 2 years in the making. I asked Skylar to write a foreword. So this book is about information, and I asked him to write a foreword because it's not about him, but he was clearly the catalyst. And he's always said, Ma, great, you're writing a book, but this is your thing. I'm not involved. I said, great. I'd like you to write a foreword, though. He said, what do you want me to write about? I've nothing to say. I said, exactly. You have nothing to say because you're just living your life. That is the message.
Yes.
That's the message. And so that's what he's going to write about how he's just embracing his humanity. And I am thrilled to be able to see that in my child, who I saw moving from completely awkward to awesome.
Yeah. I'm thrilled for you. I'm thrilled for you because when you and I first met and we were at a writing workshop, you know, all of us, it's a safe place at one of those workshops to kind of vent our trepidations, to bounce some things off of each other. And you're just so sure of yourself now, and you're just so happy with this book. It's wonderful to see.
Yeah, it's been a long process. It's
wonderful to see. And it's a process for you as well as for your son.
Right.
a whole transition. I like the way that they speak about family. And when you think about, John Bradshaw says that in his book Family, you think you're your own person. Each of your children are different, for sure. But it's like a mobile. When one of the pieces of the mobile moves, no matter how hard you try, it moves all the other pieces of the mobile. We're all connected. So you really transitioned as well.
Yeah, you know what, Bren? That is such a really wonderful analogy that you've made, because it's so true. And just really briefly, how it changed my family. So there are 2 kids, 2 parents. Even though the parents are separated, there's still 2 parents. How it changed Skylar's older sibling was because Lauren never felt comfortable, never felt that she had the sister that really worked with her, because Aviva was never really the girl that could. And now Lauren has the bro that she's always wanted. And so they're actually closer. They actually have a deeper relationship because it's more authentic, because Skylar is who he is, not someone else. And Skylar, so it's changed all the dynamics.
Isn't that nice? That's actually wonderful.
Yeah, and I would say that's regardless of how it plays out in families, you're absolutely right. It is, every person is a part of a mobile. I love that. That's so true. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because the cisgender also has identity issues. Do you know how many self-help books there are on the shelves these days of people looking for their authentic self? I talked to a woman who is divorced and trying to find herself, and she says she's in her 50s. She said the next time she gets married, it'll be her choice. I said, what? She just felt such pressure after dating this guy all through high school and university. It was expected of her to marry him, and she did so because it was expected of her. And the next time, she's going to make it her choice. So the identity crisis isn't unique to just trans people. It's something that we all grapple with. And how was the identity crisis for you, Lisa? I mean, did you just say one day, hey guys, guess what?
No, I never came out of the closet. I've never come out to say I'm gay. I always felt that if straight people don't have to come out and say that they're straight, why did I have to come out and say I'm gay? But also for me, it was, I'm Italian descent, and growing up in the 70s and 80s, you weren't allowed to come out and say, hey, I'm gay, or hey, I'm thinking this, or I don't know what this is. We didn't have, Ellen didn't come out yet. There was no, I mean, we looked at musicians and said, I think Freddie Mercury's gay. I think Boy George is gay, but you dare not say it. Like Liberace, God forbid someone said he was gay. And it's just, I never had that coming out moment. I think my family kind of figured out, okay, something's different. There's 4 of us, 3 girls and a boy. And as time went on, I figured out every time I brought a girl home to say, hey, this is my friend, quote unquote, I think they kind of figured it out and said, okay, it's more than a friend, or I've never really said to them, hey guys, I'm gay, how do you feel about it? My brother and my sisters, we all love each other, and I don't think that that's what mattered. I just don't think that anybody, this is my opinion. I mean, I know there's kids out there and young people out there that they need this thing where they gotta come out and they gotta be that person that they want to be. I just didn't feel it. Was it the time I grew up in? Possibly.
Or was it the family? Yeah, was it the family that you had that allowed you that space, which is also wonderful.
Yeah, right? Probably. But again, I never came out to tell, and in my youth, I didn't come out to say, hey guys, I did feel like I kept it in. But at the same time, as time went on, as I got older, this is who I am. That was it.
And if I can just interject by saying that, Lisa, you're an amazing testament to the fact that being supported in a family creates really happy, successful people. And now you're moving into, what Bren will eventually be talking about you moving into creating this Pride event in Stouffville. Yeah. All the research, and Skylar is really happy and doing really well. All the research shows that a person's internal happiness and groundedness and comfort with their authentic identity starts at home. So that if they are being accepted at home, home is a safe space, a welcoming space, they will move into the world. And there are direct stats that correlate acceptance at home with levels of suicide, levels of mental illness or health, poverty, success, etc. It's a direct correlation. The happier and safer the home life is, and the more accepting in whatever the mental or physical health arena, the happier and more successful the individual.
That's true.
And it makes perfect sense. You need to have in your life a safe harbor, a safe haven. There has to be some place that's always home, whether it's a physical house or whether it's a group of people that are your tribe. You have to have that safe place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for a lot of people, it's their religion. And sometimes that's not a safe place when you're, I don't know, there's no big word for it, LGBTQ.
Yep.
How's that?
Yep.
That's why there isn't one word. There's all those words, and it's a bunch of letters all put together. But those letters represent people. They represent really loving, kind, wonderful people. And I go to drum camp every year, Ontario Women's Drum Camp, where there's 298 women. Wow. And let me tell you, there are women of all kinds, and even a couple that really call themselves by the pronoun of he. The ones that come from the United States, in states where it's still illegal to be married, illegal to be thought of as anything, and dangerous, seriously dangerous to your health. When they come to this year it was in Haliburton, last year Sharbot Lake, when they come to drum camp, to see the layers of tension disappear, to see the kindness and support in a group that large, it's wonderful. They have rhythm church on Sunday. Non-denominational, accepting of everyone. Awesome. And they sing songs and shake rattles. And it looks like an old hippie conference from 1962, but boy, is it ever fun. It's just a wonderful, colorful place to be.
Awesome.
I wish all of our lives were like that in all aspects. Wouldn't that be nice?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how do you deal with this going to town council? And you stood up in front of town council in Stouffville, which, we talked about can be a little redneck. How was that?
Before I went, to be honest, I was I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I was stressing out. And thank God I have we called ourselves the Pride Committee, a bunch of friends and people I didn't know that I included that I thought would help me out. They were great. At first they said we won't let Lisa speak because I tend to swear sometimes, and I get very passionate about things, and I'm doing this really for the youth. At my age, I don't feel I need to do this for myself. I'm doing this for the youth because this is what they expressed that they wanted in town. So when I went, I was surprised. I was shocked. I mean, first you have to meet in front of a group of people before you even get to council to say, this is my idea, this is my application, this is what I want in town. And the mayor was a part of this, and it was unanimous. They all said, we need this. We have to do this. And I was like, oh, I don't have to speak. This is great. And then it got presented at the town council meeting, and they looked at it as any other applicant on there, and they said it's accepted. All the applicants are accepted. And I was like, oh, I don't have to speak again. This is great. Like,
nice. Wow.
So that tells me that, yes, I looked at this. When you look at the counselors and you see these, I think there was one woman.
Yes, there's a panel of one white women and seven white men.
Yes, and you look at that and you're kind of like, 6. Okay. And their ages, and Mayor Ian Lovett is the youngest. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is going to be hard. This is going to be tough. They were all...
It was a walk in the park.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then 3 of them were actually at the pride flag raising that the mayor did this year. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, I honestly didn't really have to do anything except fill out an application.
Great. That makes me proud.
So it was great. Mm-hmm. I was like pleasantly
creating
surprised.
Community. That's what community is all about. Community should be inclusive of everyone.
Yeah. Exactly. So it was good to see. It was good. It was a good feeling. I was happy. Like, my committee was happy. So here we are.
So, Suzanne, back to Skylar for just a minute. Poor Skylar. He's going to be famous by the end of the show. What about your relatives? What about extended family? Because we're not necessarily just talking about, you know, your own family sitting around the dining room table. We're going to talk about, you know, aunts and uncles and cousins and all of that kind of thing. How was it?
That's a good question. I'm really happy to report that there was an embracing all the way around.
Oh,
so I
goodness.
come from a large family. So I have 2 other siblings, but I have lots of aunts and uncles. The Sherkin family is a bit of a clannish family, so we're very. I would say there was this lovely, unanimous, non-event of acceptance. I attribute that to people's just willingness to embrace family. I also attribute it to the fact that there is a recognition that Skylar is just being who he is, and he's a lovely person. He's a lovely heart, and was so likable. And growing up, there was this embracing. So it was really. I'm really happy to be able to report that.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you get that mama bear instinct kicking in when you hear about these violence issues against trans people and things? Does it make the hair on the back of your neck stand up and the claws come out?
Well, that's why I'm writing this book. The reason that I wanted to write this was because I recognized the low level of awareness and understanding of what trans was about. And I did recognize that my family had a kind of blessed acceptance that wasn't consistent everywhere.
Right.
So I've been to workplaces around the country and have done lots of training and have done lots of coaching in organizations where a trans person has been identified, and then the management will reach out to me and say, "What do I do? How do I get on board? What's the right thing to do?" They always say, "What's the right thing to do? What should we be doing?" And so I've come into workplaces, many workplaces around the country. I've come into workplaces. I've worked with the identified person, and then worked with management to help them get all their policies, procedures, and behaviors in order. And then I've trained staff from fire halls to radio stations, and from Halifax to Nova Scotia, or the other side, BC.
Vancouver,
right? And so, and the questions that come to me and the concerns led me to be really aware that people have a curiosity, sometimes an openness, sometimes not, but a lack of information. And that's why I've written this book, because I want people to just be aware. And awareness is knowledge. Knowledge is freedom of choice, of understanding.
Well, we did have a couple of questions from listeners, and I will say Steve asked, what gender is on your son's, and he put son in quotations, current passport?
So thank you. You no longer have to put the son in quote, because he is my son. In fact, the moment that he identified, in that moment of the video viewing, he was my son. But that is an interesting question, because here's the thing. It took Skylar a couple of years of fighting with City Hall, literally, to get his gender identity changed on his driver's license, his passport, and all of his documentation. And it was a long, frustrating experience, which he had to stay focused and patient about. And now he has M for male on his name, and every time and even to this day, every time he gets a letter with a Skylar Hagen on it, it feels like a success. Mm-hmm. It feels like a success. Every once in a while, I will see his alternate name, and I'll think, "Oh, they've got an old mailing list," and we just throw it in the garbage. So it takes it takes dedication. I will say, though, that last year, also to the credit of the Canadian government, they no longer require a gender identification on a passport. Just a name.
That's awesome.
Good. Mm-hmm. So driver's licenses and things like that.
Well, driver's license still
they're different.
Driver's license still too. And to the point, just to hark back to what Luke said. So a driver's license. So not everyone is that dedicated, or not everyone is willing to express themselves in their gender identity based on their own fears and journey. And so some people will have their identification in one gender and express in another gender. And the invitation to all, whether it's police officers or medics or whatever it is, or individuals, just to, as Luke said, take the lead from the person you're speaking to, not use the written identification.
Well, for the NCRA, when we went to the conference recently, Jason and I went down there to Ryerson for the annual conference that takes place in different cities all over the world. One of the criteria on the, when you fill out a form for something and you have to make sure that the ones with the asterisks are filled out, or it won't let you cash out at the end. Mm-hmm. So one of the things was what your preferred pronoun was. So underneath everyone's name, it had in brackets underneath your name, she, her, hers. Right. He, his. It showed all the different pronouns that people like to be identified with, and there were some that were blank. It was really interesting.
So to that point, actually, pronouns is become a bit of a political football.
It has.
Because the three areas of pronouns are she, her, he, him, and they, them. Mm-hmm. And so to the LGBTQ plus community, or the queer community, they, them is an acceptable pronoun identifier for people who don't want to identify, or for people who feel fluid. And we haven't really talked about that, but some people feel fluid within this spectrum of male, female, and don't want to be identified in male, female. And so they've taken on the
gender
pronouns.
non-specific.
Yeah. And so for cis people who are binary, male or female, they don't have, that doesn't kind of compute in their brain. But let's just park that for a minute and go back to pronouns. There has been a lot of antagonism around the use of the pronoun they, them, because it contravenes all of our grammatical understanding that they, them is plural. Whereas in the queer community, they, them is just a courageous identifier that they are non-binary, not male, not female. And so that has created some brain fog or anger or antagonism. The invitation here to listeners and to everyone is to breathe into it, accept that this is the way gender identity and gender expression is in this age. You are identifying either as a male or as a female or somewhere else on the spectrum. What I really just want to land with this discussion is that gender is a concept. And that's actually the key message in my book, that gender is a concept that can be seen as a spectrum. I know we think about light as a spectrum, but if you think about, I'm presenting the notion that gender is a spectrum, where the two ends are the binary ends, male in identity and expression on one side in all of its various forms, and on the other side, female in its identity and expression in all of its various forms. And in the middle of those two binary points is is a whole spectrum of expression and identities that are now available to us, and we're now talking about here. Trans being only one on that spectrum. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have to take a little break here and pay some bills at the station. You're listening to Fresh Waves, a Whistle FM production, and Whistle FM is Stouffville's community radio station. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and Fresh Waves will be right back right after this, so stay tuned.